All right, today we are talking about the Constitution of the United States of America, right? The required document, the lasting document, written back in 1787 and finally ratified in 1789 when the amendments are proposed and goes into effect in 1791. This has been our document. This has been our plan for government for last 230 plus years. So it all starts with we the people of the United States, right? We the people of the United States. So it's establishing a democracy, right? The framers clearly state their intent to establish a democracy that the government but will be rooted in the consent of the people. And that's really important. So moving forward, we're going to move on to the articles, right? The first three articles are the branches of government, right? They establish the three branches of government, which is a separation of powers. It takes the powers of government and divides them into three branches. Article 1 is the legislative branch. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. Right, so creating a bicameral legislature. Goes on to explain the rules, procedures, the qualifications for House of Representative members. Section 3 is all about the Senate, same thing, rules, procedures, and the qualifications to be senators, right? Also gets into impeachment, right? So we're also talking about separation of powers, but kind of tied into the separation of powers is this idea of checks and balances, right? That the House has the power to begin impeachment against the president, right, or any government official, and or judges too, right? Supreme Court judges can be impeached, and then once the two-thirds of once the majority of the House impeaches, right, which we saw happen with Donald Trump. So the impeachment starts in the House. The charges are brought in the House with a majority vote. Then it moves to the Senate, and Senate can remove an impeached official. They can remove the president. They can remove a judge, right, with a two-thirds vote in the Senate. So we're also getting into checks and balances, right? The Congress can pass laws. The president can veto them. Congress can override a presidential veto, right? When we get to the president can enter into treaties, but the Senate has the power to confirm those treaties. So we'll get into all that too, right? Probably the most important section is Section 8, right? All the enumerated powers. Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, right? To borrow money, to regulate commerce, the Commerce Clause, right? With foreign nations and among several states and with the Indian tribes. Establish a uniform rule of naturalization, right? Creating naturalization laws, coining money, providing for punishment of counterfeiting, establish post offices, and establish inferior courts, the Supreme Court, right? So on and so forth. And then if we go all the way down the bottom, provide, maintain a navy, so on and so forth, right? If we go all the way to the bottom, probably the most expansive power for Congress is the power to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by the Constitution of the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof, right? Necessary and proper. McCulloch versus Maryland, right? The power to create a national bank is a power given to Congress through the necessary and proper clause. Okay, so continuing on, we're going to go to Article 2, which establishes the executive branch, right? The executive branch and the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States, right? Um, it goes on to talk about the election of the president, right? The way the electors shall be chosen and how the electors will formally choose the president of the United States, right? That every state gets an elector per member of Congress that they have, right? So all states are guaranteed at least three. More populous states are guaranteed more. Um, the qualifications for the president, right? The president must be a natural born citizen, must attain the age of 14 years old, and must be a resident of the United States for at least 14 years, right? Um, so continuing on, we also have the powers of the president. The vice president would take over. The president's removed or incapacitated. Um, the power, section 2 are the powers of the president, right? The power will be, oh, I'm sorry, the president will be the commander in chief, right? That he can pardon, he can grant pardons and reprieves, that he can enter into treaties with foreign countries, given the advice and consent of the Senate, right? The check on the president just entering into any treaties that they have to be confirmed by 2/3 of the Senate, right? And that the president can appoint members to government, but those also have to be approved by the Senate. Okay. So then Article 3 establishes the judicial branch, right? The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court. And that's it. That's the only court, right? All other courts, the framers weren't quite sure what the judicial branch should look like. So they gave the power to create all inferior courts beneath the Supreme Court to Congress, right? So Congress creates all the courts beneath the Supreme Court. And then also talks about uh, Article 4, right? Article 4 is the relations among the states, the full faith and credit clause, and the privileges and immunities clause are both in there, right? So those are basically agreements between the states. If this is going to be a compact amongst the states have to get along. Right? They have to grant full faith and credit to other state laws, procedures, rulings, and we are all privileged and immune to other state laws, right? So if we're traveling in other states, we are treated as a resident of that state. We're granted, we cannot be discriminated against because we're from other states. Article 5, the amendment process, right? 2/3 of both houses will propose amendments, and then those amendments will be, once proposed, they will be admitted to the states and ratified by the state legislatures of 3/4 of the state, right? The amendment process. Article 6 is a supremacy clause, right? States that uh, anytime a state law comes into conflict with the Constitution or a law passed by Congress, the Constitution and the laws passed by Congress are the supreme law of the land. Okay, um, kind of along with McCulloch versus Maryland, right? That states can't tax banks because of supremacy clause. That's what the Supreme Court ruled. Then lastly, Article 7, ratification. In order for the Constitution to go into effect, 9 out of 13 states had to ratify it, right? And then we get into the amendments. Yes, you do need to know all the amendments. Amendments 1 through 27 should have a general idea what those amendments do. So this is the Constitution of the United States, right? Hopefully you enjoyed it and made it a little bit more clear for you. Keep studying, keep working hard. Thank you.